We're thrilled to host Aaron McReynolds, the visionary co-founder and CEO of Alysio, a groundbreaking software company at the forefront of enhancing sales team dynamics through artificial intelligence. Aaron's remarkable journey from the financial sector at Goldman Sachs to revolutionizing sales strategies with Alysio demonstrates a profound commitment to innovation, excellence, and empowering sales professionals worldwide. As a global citizen with roots in England and experiences that span continents, Aaron brings a unique perspective to leadership and business. Aaron.
It's very nice of you.
Yeah, you bet, man. Really pumping you up,
That's great. Thank you.
I love it. Thanks for being on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we, for whatever reason, looking back 10 years, I feel like we would have potentially come in contact with each other, whether through various friends and stuff, but it's nice to have a sit-down chat with you.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, talk to me about you're from England. Mm-hmm. You've lived all over the globe with your wife, with your kids, and now you're settled kind of back in Utah. But talk to me about the background of Aaron and what's kind of brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. So I was born in the UK, in Leicester, which most people have never been to. You wouldn't if you didn't have to. Lived there until I was about 8 years old, and then moved down south to Surrey for a short while. And then my dad was actually an entrepreneur, started a company, and he went out to Australia for 4 weeks. And then we got a phone call saying, hey, I'm not going to be here for 4 weeks. Looks like it's going to be 4 months. Do you want to come over? Wow. So took us out of school. Yeah. And we went over for a 4-month holiday and didn't go back for 8 years. Sold the house, everything.
Wow.
So I did 8 years in Sydney. And then, when I was 16, we went back to the UK. So I did my final 2 years A-levels in England. And then went back to Australia for about 6 months right before an LDS mission. Did 2 years in New Zealand. And then while I was in New Zealand, my family moved to Arizona. So I came over, went to BYU, and that was kind of my first stint in Utah. But a little bit more travel. Did some time in Australia again with Qualtrics.
Okay.
And then some time in Orange County with Okta.
Was there quite that? Do you feel like there was any kind of culture shock from going from England, Sydney, to then being kind of a transplant in Utah before your family moved? Or?
Yeah, I've been here for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think there are still times where I get culture shock. And I know it sounds crazy because we all speak English and whatnot, but it's just
not at all.
People don't and you've spent time in England, so you understand just who people are in England, the way they carry themselves, how you have conversations, especially when it comes to business. I was on a call yesterday.
It's totally different.
With a guy from Sweden, and it's just so brash and honest. He's like, I don't like this, I don't like that, I love this. Whereas over here, it's oh, this is great. Everything's positive until behind the scenes it's not.
Yeah, until it's not. No, it's a totally different story. Yeah, that's super cool. And talk to me about founding Alysio. It seems like, obviously in your career path, you probably saw problems that needed to be solved. And is that kind of where Alysio was born out of? Or where did that come from?
Yeah, I think, we got really fortunate. So I met my co-founder at Goldman Sachs about 10 years ago. Always knew I wanted to do something with him. We had a few different ideas along the way. We were going to do an exclusive water bottle company.
Cool.
Invite-only water bottle company, almost handbag status.
Yeah.
We were going to gamify stock picking, just little ideas along the way. And then, I went to Qualtrics, was there for about 4 years. We had every single sales tool under the sun, 800 salespeople.
Yeah.
And still we felt like there was a gap. And for us, that gap was, how do you know you've had a great day in sales? How can you know yesterday was a good day, today's a good day, tomorrow's going to be a good day? And with all the software we had, we still felt like we couldn't answer that question well enough. So some of the leaders put together a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet would track your points in a day. Those points were made up of your top of funnel KPIs. And so it just became the benchmark. If you get 10 points every day, you knew you'd had a good day. So I used it for about 2 years at Qualtrics. And then when I went to Okta, COVID hit. And that problem became even bigger.
No kidding.
I could have been at the golf course for 8 hours of my day and no one knew. It was just, you kind of lost that transparency. So I started using the spreadsheet again, and I think I was just in a weird headspace, sitting in my garage, working on my own, and I just called Ryan. I was like, hey, why don't we see what everyone else is doing to solve this problem.
Yeah.
So made a bunch of calls, reached out to leaders in California and in Utah, and like the spreadsheet response just came up so often. So we decided we were going to go and build a platform. So started off with that, like very simple concept, like 10,000 steps, you've had a great day in health. 10 points a day, you've had a great day in sales. And then we've gamified it with leaderboards, competitions, real-time rewards, recognition. And then the other piece that I felt I'd done, manually my entire career and in a Google Doc was all my internal meetings. It's like one-on-ones, pipeline reviews, reps who are on pips. I was like, just in one doc, they just sat with me. So that's also in the platform for kind of transparency, coaching, performance management.
That's super cool. Talk to me about your co-founder and like that relationship. I have a co-founder too. Yeah. Feel like it is a marriage. Yeah, it is. A marriage is probably a pretty close term, or as close as term as you can get to what that relationship's like.
Yeah, I think, I started Goldman, first job out of school. I sat right next to him, and we essentially got tasked to do the same thing, which first year analysts, we did every single RFP for Goldman Sachs globally, apart from Japan, because we didn't speak Japanese. So, we would be sitting there all day, every day, emailing MDs in New York that have been at Goldman for 30 years, and we're like a first-year analyst. Hey, I need this by the end of the day. He's like, who are you? Who the heck so are you? It was kind of like my first kind of, I guess, forage into sales and that kind of relationship management piece. You had to be able to manage internally, and then we were putting together docs that had like $6 billion on the line, and it was me and Ryan doing that. Man. So, there were a few Friday nights till 10:30 getting things done, and it was just one of those where I was like, okay, this guy has everything in his brain that I don't have. And it just felt like we were kind of one when we were doing these RFPs together. And so we just kept in touch. When I went to Australia, he came out and visited. And we just kind of kept in touch via text. We'd meet up, do lunches, these little brainstorming ideas. And then, when it came time to actually kind of pull the trigger, I was like, that's the person that I know this will work with, which is kind of funny to a lot of people because neither of us are technical. We had to go and get someone technical to come and build the product. But from like an operations standpoint, finance standpoint, like he builds the best models you've ever seen. I was like, it has to be Ryan. Yeah,
no, you definitely have to have a little bit of yin and yang. I'm the same way with Shane. You have to have something that they don't, and vice versa, for it to work long term. And you also have to be able to give each other feedback, even though you're friends, because it sounds like you're friends, and I'm friends with Shane too. But sometimes that that has to also exist, for growth.
Yeah, right? And I think back, it's been probably 10 years. We don't always agree. At the start, which I think is healthy. But like, we've never had a fight, we've never had a confrontation. It's like I speak my mind, he speaks his mind, and like somehow it's just like always harmonious by the end of the conversation. It's like, yes, let's go. But I think as well, like he, I trust him that he calls out my blind spots and weaknesses. Like, you're kind of in your own lane, you're running in a direction, you got your blinders on. Like, everyone needs someone who's like, hey, you've missed this, you've missed that. Like, you need to be better, like, improve yourself. And he's always good for the honest feedback. So I wouldn't deal it with anybody else.
That's huge, man. And I feel like less common these days for whatever reason, or you get a big cap table and you've got people that probably shouldn't be on there or don't know how to give feedback or whatever. If you got a CTO that doesn't meld with maybe the two original founders, so it seems like you're in a good spot.
We have a great team. I mean, we're at 7 full-time, 8-ish, can't talk about it, but everyone that's come on like just fits. And I don't know how, because I didn't know any of them before we started. Most of them were kind of 1-2 interviews, maybe max. But we would have everyone on the team interview that person, or at least talk to them before making a decision. But we got super fortunate. Like, we hired a head of product first, and then he brought in the head of development. Ryan did the MBA program with the guy who's running marketing. the person who we brought in to do sales was like a referral from 2 people that I knew. And yeah, we just got so fortunate.
Amazing team culture, man. That's awesome. Tell me a little, we were talking before we started the podcast about your love of design. How is that design, cars, abstract concepts? How do you feel like that's influenced the choices you made in your career and your business decisions now with Alysio?
Yeah, heavily. For me, like I mentioned, I grew up thinking I was going to be a car designer, like my uncle. I studied art, I studied design and technology, both in high school and in college. That's the path that I thought I was going down, and then obviously didn't go down that path. But I think it's still such like a innate part of who I am as a person. My wife is also very, involved in aesthetics and design and marketing and whatnot. And so I think it comes up a lot in the product itself. We're actually really fortunate, the guy that's designed our entire front end, incredible designer. And
the platform itself is really, I feel like it's really beautiful for sure.
No, thank you. And that's important.
It's huge.
That's a massive part of, even this morning we're doing a massive, probably our biggest product release at midnight on Friday.
Oh, cool, man.
And still, like, we sat there and we're doing a final review, and there was just like one piece that was just driving me nuts. Yeah. I'm like, we got to change it.
We got to fix it.
Like, sorry guys, but like, it doesn't look right. Yeah. So I don't know if they hate me for that.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, design to me, the user experience, I think it's just going to pay off in the long run. So I'd rather get it right the first time. But yeah, I hope when people see the product, and we've had the feedback, it's like, wow, this looks a lot better than a 1 year old product, right?
In Salesforce.
In Salesforce. But I think we've had the luxury of building a product, within the last year and a half, and tools are better than they were. I think designers are better than they were. I think the focus on user experience is even more important now than it's ever been. Obviously, Apple's kind of paved that.
Well, especially for like sales reps, I feel like you're almost overwhelmed with tools, or you have too many. Depending on the organization, you're almost overwhelmed with the amount of like different user experiences that you have to navigate.
Correct.
Like, and that's why I think you see a lot of like reps are like, I don't want to enter stuff in Salesforce. Yep. Like I got my own spreadsheet, or my own way of doing things, because it's just too much.
Yeah, and I think we made a decision very early on that we weren't going to build a tool for RevOps like every other tool is built. It's like, let's build it for the end user, like the sales reps and the managers that are in this tool all day, every day. Every product decision is like, would they want that? Can we make their life better? Can we make it easier? Even that decision today was like combining one button and a second button into one button. I don't know if anyone's ever going to know or notice, but like, I'm like, okay, if I was a rep, that's just one more thing I would have to do in a day. Times 365 days. Like, let's just get rid of it. Just make it easier. So, yeah, I think we've always taken a pretty strong focus on the product design from day one. And actually, we hired a head of product before we hired a developer, which is probably not the normal way to go. But I don't speak code. And I needed someone in the middle who could translate the vision of the platform to then actually go and build it. And we just got so fortunate with the gentleman who runs product for us. Like, whatever is in my head, he can just go and translate it into his Figma files. And before we know it, like what dev's built, I'm like,
it's done.
That's what
That's amazing. That's amazing. Especially to build a team like that, you really need you need dreamers, you need the visionaries, you need the doers, you also need the drivers, like the people at the end of the day. You really need a combination of all three. You guys sound like you have an awesome team.
Yeah, very
so
fortunate.
Fun. How is your relationship with your wife and your kids? Like, obviously, as a CEO, as a co-founder, like trying to navigate running a business, having a family, growing that family, doing all the travel you do, like. Where do you feel like you try, and balance isn't probably the great word, but like, how do you navigate that? You yourself, because everybody's different. I navigate it differently too. So
yeah, I think you just have to, like, I take it use case by use case. Like, there are some family dinners you can miss, right? And it's like, the world's not going to end if you're not at that family dinner. But yesterday was my son's first soccer game of the season. Yeah. And he calls me and he's like, I'm not going unless you're there. So I go. right?
Yeah.
It's like, make the time, go do that. It's going to mean so much more to him than me being somewhere for another hour and a half or whatever it be. And so that's just kind of how I've taken it. It's like, what is really important? What is going to have a lasting effect if I'm not there or I'm absent? But, you know, I think about my wife. She's been there kind of since day one. I've been known to be somewhat impulsive. Like, I bought a house without telling her. I was at the gym and put an offer in on a house, and it got accepted by the time I got home. It's like, we're moving.
And what was McKenna's reaction to that?
Yeah, I think I'm still paying for it.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, hey, do you want to go to Australia? Maybe. Oh, I just got the job. We're going to Australia. And she's just, kudos to her. She's jumped in at every little hurdle, every switch, followed me everywhere that kind of the careers needed to go. And then even with Alysio, you know, I was still working a full-time job when we started doing the designs. And then I had a call with a VC. They said, we're in, but you need to quit your job. I was like, okay, it's the next phone call. And I didn't even go in and talk to McKenna. I called work and quit.
Oh my gosh.
I just called him, and because I knew, like, if I talked to anyone else, they might try and talk me off that ledge. It's like, no,
you just got to do it.
I just got to do it.
I respect that. Yeah.
Just called him. Was like, 2 weeks, I'm done. And she supported me. So I think someday she wants to kill me. But
hey, you know,
you take the good with the bad.
That's marriage most of the time, huh? That's fantastic. And growing up, you had an entrepreneur dad. Mm-hmm. How did your parents influence like maybe some of your entrepreneurial decisions and journey, or do you feel like they did?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I was pretty young when my dad was doing it, and it was kind of like a crazy story. They started in England. He had to go to Australia to do it. Once he got out there, he's got a job at American Express, and then he's done the career thing since then. So like the last 20 odd years was like just corporate ladder career. And so I think it was nice to be able to get insight into both sides. Like, I think he probably prefers that Amex track. Like, that just worked for him. He did it incredibly. But, you know, for me, I got to Goldman and randomly, I did an advertising degree. Went out to New York, found out how much you get paid in advertising. I was like, I'm not doing that. Came back and
Goldman.
literally did a Google search. I was like, who pays the most out of college? And Goldman popped up. I didn't know. I knew they were a bank. I didn't know anything about them. I'd never taken a finance class, never done a math class, and just applied on an advertising degree. But, you know, I think that kind of speaks to like the way that I operate, where it's like, as soon as I got in there, I was like, I can't do this. Like, pretty much from day one, where it was, no matter how good you are, you will be an analyst for 3 years. And then you'll all graduate, and you'll all be associates for 2 years. And then you'll all graduate, and then you'll all be VPs for 15, 20 odd years. I'm like, that doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. And so I don't know if it's like...
I've got friends that still work at Goldman that are working that ladder, and that's just like...
And it works for people.
It totally does.
For a lot of people.
I feel like it fits a very particular person, but
But that just that wasn't me. And so, I had a friend approach who was at Domo at the time and said, hey, you should be in sales. Like, you should go do a career in sales. So, I got a job at Domo, job offer. And then at the same time, I was talking to another friend that I got the job offer at Domo. He's like, don't go to Domo. Go to Qualtrics. And they were hiring for Australia at the time. And to me, I was just like, okay, if I'm going to leave Goldman Sachs, something I've worked so hard to get to, it's got to be the right story. And so to me, it was like, okay, I'm going to go join Qualtrics at the point that they're at, open up an Australia office, be kind of, one of the first salespeople on the ground. Just felt like enough of a story and an experience that I could go on and kind of use that for the rest of my career. And looking back, like, that's probably the most pivotal moment of my entire life. So, I think you just got to kind of trust your gut. And my dad probably knows this, but like, him and I are very different people. Like, I'm definitely more like my mom and her side of the family. And I think for a long time, you always try and emulate your dad, right? I think to some degree. And so, I think, maybe some part of me, like that Goldman decision was like, oh, this is the safe bet. This is the right bet. This is how it works. But then, I just knew I kind of had to be true to myself. And where I knew I was going to excel, I was never going to be the smartest person in the room at Goldman, right? And I was never going to be the best at finance. And so I was like, no, let's just go and play in a field where competitively I knew I could win. So,
That's awesome. How do you feel like your international experience in, you say we got England, we got Australia, and then you also New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure other travels too. How do you feel like that's influenced your decisions and the way you're building product and, you know, your career?
Yeah, massively. I think about my wife. She grew up in Bountiful, went to the same two schools, and her friend group was Bountiful, and got married and finally left Bountiful. And for me, it was just the polar opposite, right? Like, you just get thrown in the deep end every few years. You're kind of reinventing yourself. You're meeting new friends. You're going into new schools. Luckily, you didn't have to learn new languages or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, even just the cultures. Like, when I got my mission called to New Zealand, I was kind of disappointed. It was the closest mission to my house at the time. And then I get there, and it was just so different. Like, the culture was different. The people were so different. The most incredible place in 2 years. And so, yeah, I kind of look back at all these experiences that I've had where I think it shaped who I am. I think it shaped kind of the outlook on life and kind of what's achievable. I was listening to, Gary Tan yesterday on his YouTube channel, and he had this clip from Steve Jobs, and he's like, you just have to look at the experiences you've had in your life. So when you go and start something, like, start it based on those experiences. Like, I'm not a water bottle guy, right? That was just a good idea.
Yeah.
But I'm like, are we ever going to be the best water bottle company in the world if we don't live and breathe water bottles? Or, like, that's not my space. And so I think I've been really fortunate that when we started Alysio, I felt like we've been running an MVP for 9 years. Because I've been using it in a spreadsheet format, knew that it worked, knew people that had used it that knew that it worked. And so I think, that was able to then shape the product and I guess the trajectory of the company, because it lived 9 years of experiences that I'd already had. And so when it became time to design the product, I think it was just one of those where it's like, I've seen this. I see what this is going to look like in 2 years, in 5 years. I know where it can go. And so, yeah, at that point, you just kind of have to jump in. But, the international piece, I'm so grateful. Like, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the fact I had to repeat 1 year of school, but other than that, it's like everything else.
Hey, in hindsight, it's a blip.
It helps. So, but yeah, I think it shaped me massively and given me a lot of experiences I never would have had otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think the best ideas are the ones that are closest to us. We just don't realize it. Yeah. Like, I had, I don't know if you know Brad Parker. He's the founder of Private Auto. They've got their product. They're pushing really hard and changing that space. And he got the idea, and he said when he was on our podcast, the best ideas come within 5 feet of you, right? The things that you interact with every day that are just those pain points that you just kind of don't realize it until you start really thinking closely. At what point was like the catalyst for Alysio? It seems like there was lots of ideas, but was there one moment in time, or was it just moments that kind of built up on each other, and then it got to that inflection point where you're at Goldman, you're like, I need to do something different?
Yeah, I think, blessing and a curse, but COVID. Like, I interviewed at Okta. COVID was kind of starting to happen. We finished the interview in the Bay, and as we walked down, they shut the doors behind us to the Okta headquarters, and they didn't open again for the year and a half I was there.
Holy
so
cow.
I didn't meet a single person until like my second last week at Okta.
Wow.
And so I think for me, from a personal level, it's like, okay, these pains that I've been having in a campus type job at Qualtrics are still relevant. And then when COVID hit, it's like, wait, now we're all remote.
That gets removed.
And it was just like, this doesn't work, things have changed, and it just kind of felt like an opportunity, kind of one of those like once in a lifetime shifts in the way that people thought and worked. And so I think that was kind of that moment. But I still have the text that I sent to Ryan, where I kind of gave him the overview of the point framework and what I thought it could be. And at the bottom I was like, this is the one. Like, I have no doubt that this is it. Let's go do it. And we hadn't really had that conviction, I don't think, until that point.
That's awesome.
But yeah, if COVID hadn't have happened, probably wouldn't have built it.
Yeah, no, I feel like COVID and the pandemic, for a lot of people, it was a shift, whether it's in your own self, or a shift in how you view the world, or a shift in, hey, not everything's in my control.
Correct.
You know, and I I'm not passionate about what I'm doing right now or whatever it is, right? And just that inflection point to think internally and think about what the future holds for you, and then make the choice. And a lot of people didn't make the choice and probably still, are feeling the effects from it, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think it was, especially for me, I'm a social person. I
Same.
enjoy my friend group. I enjoy my soccer group. And I don't think I'd ever spent so much time alone.
Yeah.
Right? Just like in my garage, on my own, trying to work. And I was like, I don't function this way. This doesn't work for me. And so, there's a lot of the product that kind of caters to that, which I think is a very personal piece for me, where it's like, how do we get the sales culture to remote workers? It's competition, it's rewards, it's recognition, all those things that you crave in person that
ringing the
were
bell.
Just ripped away. Go hit a gong, right? It's like that was just taken away, and we tried our best to do some form of digital culture with happy hours on Zoom, and it didn't work. It just was not the same.
It's not the same, man.
It was not the same. So I think that was definitely kind of that catalyst moment, the big driver of like, okay, now's a good time to go and do this. But I still worked for like another 2 and a bit years after that first text. Like, it wasn't like I had sent the text and was like gone. It's like, no, let's go think this through properly, test it, design it. And it was a process before the first check.
Well, and also make, be a little risk averse, and also keep the income coming in, and really, it's interesting to me because I have a lot of conversations with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and it's a lot of people think, entrepreneurship is a big risk, and maybe from the outside it is, but like most entrepreneurs are pretty actually risk averse people. We just, you act on a good idea and you back it up for a very, very long time and be super consistent about it.
Yeah. I think I'm probably more of the risk taker side, and I think this wouldn't have happened if I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Because it is like, it's one of those moments where you're like, hey, I have a really good job, and it pays really well, and I can travel, and we have all these freedoms. And I think people think going into entrepreneurship is all about freedom. It's like, not till you start it, right?
You're trading 9 to 5 for 24/7.
Yeah, you got this the wrong way around. And so, I think having that side of me that's like, just jump with 2 feet. Like, I've always just kind of been of that mentality. I try not to do anything, half-assed. It's just like, if I'm going to do it, I'm all in. And so even with that kind of starting point, it's like, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to go and just fully commit, just burn the boats, just all in. And so I think that's why it was like, I'm just going to call my boss and quit right now. And just like, that's my commitment. Right? I'm just going to go and do it. So, I think, I definitely grew up, like I was raised on like Pink Floyd and punk music and like this concept of anti-establishment. And I think that feeds into who I am as a person, even today, right? Where it's like, I love the people that I work for, but at the same time, I was always like, I kind of want to work for myself and, want to be able to call shots and kind of influence things. I had a phenomenal career, incredible managers that were always like kind of on the sidelines trying to enable it. Yeah. And then at some point, you just got to do it for yourself.
You just got to jump. You just got to make the jump.
Just got to do it.
It feels like with you being a super people person, obviously like networking, LinkedIn, like connecting with people has been important and also fueled Alysio's growth. Yeah. Walk me through how that has maybe been a catalyst for you, because you guys are, I feel like, more or less building in public. You've been pretty open about the platform, what you guys are doing, where you guys are growing. How and why make the choice to do that, I guess?
Yeah, I think you have to in this day and age, whether you like it or not. Like my wife's granddad, super successful, owned a nursery. They sell flowers to the Bellagio, Walmart, done incredibly well for himself. Yeah. But like outside of his family, no one knows that he owns that business, right? It's just like he just built an empire. It's not on LinkedIn. It's not on a billboard anywhere. There's no ads on TV. Whereas like when we started this, we're like, okay, it's a competitive space. We need an advantage. We just have to put it out there from day one. And I think back to that like design, branding piece, like we were very intentional early on of like, let's build
Nail
a
it.
brand and let's nail it and let's get it out there. And so our third hire was Justin to do marketing, which is like not the normal third hire that startups make. But, you know, he came in, I was like, we need a podcast, we need a newsletter, we need to do events, we need good branded clothing. Like, we just need to get our name out there and just have an impact. And then, you know, I've just been pretty dedicated about partnering with really good channel partners, influencers, like some of the people we've got on the podcast already. It's like, pinch me. I would never have thought these people would be on our podcast in the first 4 months of doing it. But, you know, that to us is like, that's how we get the name out. You know, if Dan Martell puts his stamp of approval on Alysio,
huge.
A lot more people are going to trust it. And so I think with what we're doing, there is an element of like change management, a new way of thinking. We're not the normal way that sales has been run. And so I think for us, you need to get people to buy in to the way that we think about it.
Yeah.
And so, I think the kind of public nature of what we're doing, look, if it doesn't work out, we'll pay a big price because people will know. But I was like, no, this is the only way to build right now. And then, you know, kind of one of the confirmations for us was Silicon Slopes last year. I don't know if you went, but like Gary Vee spoke.
It was
like,
huge.
Do you guys understand LinkedIn? Like, it's now like a cool place to be as far as social media goes. There are influencers in there. You know, I think there's 1 billion people on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's free advertising every time I post. I may not enjoy it. It may be time that I don't want to spend writing LinkedIn posts. But like, I don't use AI to do it. I try and do it.
Yeah.
I try and be authentic. I try and be personable in my posts. I'm not just posting about Alysio all day. It doesn't work. It's like, know me as a founder, know the story, and then you'll know the brand, and then you'll know the product, kind of in that order.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. You've shared a lot, even about like your little soccer cohort, or football cohort, that you've got going on, which has been fun, and it's a cool way for you to connect with others too. What have been ways that you guys have tried to build community with Alysio? Is that part of your objective long term?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think about so our soccer group, football group is there's a bunch of founders that come and play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturdays, 6 a.m. The alarm's going off at 5:20, but like that's like that hour that we all can find in a week.
In the day.
And then, you know, we've had a lot of support. It started 6 years ago. You know, we've sponsored kids that have come over from people's missions and donated clothes and computers. We helped out one of the people on the team, you know, when they had a child. Like it is a community in the soccer group. And then we try to replicate that with Alysio. Like you think about where salespeople live, it's on LinkedIn. Salespeople generally, there's a lot of introvert salespeople, but like a lot of extroverts. They like events, they like being in person. They want to feel part of a community. You've got Rev Genius, you've got Pavilion. Like people are kind of starving for that. And so even for us, when we started, we're like, look, if we just get one customer from doing a podcast, great. And I think we're at episode 20-something of the podcast. And like I said, the people that have been on it, been incredible. I think we've got 2 customers from the podcast already. You know, the events that we've done, we've taken them on the road. We were just in Idaho a week or so ago. We're going to Arizona. We're doing another one in Utah.
So fun.
I'm off to the Bay. I'm going to New York tomorrow. It's like we just have to be out there. And I think that's one of the things I'm probably most proud of is like how many people come to me and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of Alysio. I'm like, we're a year old. Like, we're barely coming out to market. And the fact that they know that, or they've seen a LinkedIn post, or they've listened to the podcast, like, it's very rewarding that it's working. And again, I think we can do more, but for how young that kind of strategy is, like, I think it's really having a massive effect. So shout out to Justin.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, total shout out to Justin. And I feel like Gary Vee, he's got his new book. We're really pushing Gary Vee on this, but is Day Trading Attention, right? And he spoke about that at Silicon Slopes Summit. And it's really like you need to find where, first of all, obviously you guys have done a really good job of knowing your customer, right? Like you guys know who your end user is. And then you can then go to where they are and market to them where they are, where their behavior is going, where their eyeballs are at, so that they can see you and be motivated to act, right? do you feel like you guys have a very, or did you, I guess, narrow down that customer profile early on? Or do you feel like you knew exactly who you're going to build this for? Or has that kind of evolved in the course of the last year?
Yeah, it's evolved. I think we did what most first-time founders do, and you get this fear of like, we need the biggest TAM on the planet, right? Like, how big is this market? Unfortunately for us, it's a massive market.
Yeah.
The trouble with that is like narrowing down the buyers and the ICP. So we're like, oh yeah, we sell to B2B SaaS. Great.
Yeah,
Not very narrow. Kill us. Narrow it down on an employee count. Still not very narrow. Let's narrow it down on the actual buyer profile. Like, are we selling to CROs, or do we want to get the individual contributors in first? And so I think we're still trying to refine that. But what's really hard is like, it's a horizontal platform. Like, it works for B2B SaaS. We have real estate customers. It works for financial advisors. And so it's like, you kind of get lost in who you can sell to because there's so many applications for the platform. But, I think that's something we talk about frequently is like, no, we need to be more focused. We need to be in the backyards of the exact buyer at the right time. And so primarily our customer base is B2B SaaS companies. We've tried to slim down the employee count at those type of customers.
Yeah.
But that's what's hard is like we've got these customers today, and it's just kind of like a hybrid mix of who it works for. And so, yeah, we have to be even more diligent on that piece for sure, and just get even more focused and streamlined.
Yeah, cool. We're going to pause for just 2 minutes. They have to go get buses and stuff, so they're going to leave.
Thank
they
you,
run
gents.
they run the cameras remotely too,
Oh.
so they're going to peace out. Then we can keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We probably got like 2-3 more questions.
Cool. Yeah, that's
in the
great.
time that we have.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, man. Thank you.
Okay, we'll jump back into it. Every entrepreneur faces setbacks for sure. Like, we all go through ups and downs. Can you tell me about a time that you guys have faced what you feel like maybe is a significant setback and how you kind of push through it and keep pushing forward?
Yeah, I'll tell you about our darkest day. It's a good story. So we were in Mercury Bank when we started, and then the FTX saga was kind of kicking off.
Yep.
And one of our VC channels was kind of like, you might want to move your money out of Mercury. So we're like, okay, we'll put it in SVB. So we moved our money in Monday,
man.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and SVB went down on Thursday, same week. And if you were in that world, you know what that Thursday and Friday were like. Like, we tried to move it the Friday. Thursday, we're like, we should move it. We're like, we'll wait. Let's just see what tomorrow looks like. And then Friday, it was locked. Like, we couldn't get into our account. You couldn't touch it. And it was just like, we're not making payroll. There's only 3 of us, so it wasn't like the end of the world.
But it's serious.
It was serious. And we're like, okay, if we don't, we knew we were insured, but we've heard it can take like 2 years to get that money. We're like, we can't live this way. Luckily, it kind of settled. But I think it was pretty wild that within kind of 5 months of being alive, we almost had a banking crisis. And then that same time, it was like March, it was raining, it was dark. I got into like a pretty dark headspace where it's like, is this going to work?
Yeah.
And it was like so early on.
Jeez,
we were trying to fundraise, the people that we thought were going to help us fundraise were now just trying to save their portcos. No one knew what was going to happen with SVB going down. And so it was like 2 months. We couldn't get a meeting with anyone. Like, just like crickets. It's like, just stop, dried up completely. And obviously, like, our cash was coming down. So we had to make some emergency decisions. Like, we had a team in India with 3 devs. I'm like, cut them right now, today, done. We don't pay another dime. Like, we can't.
We can't even do it.
And so it was just like, a few of those emergency decisions. But I remember sitting there. I was on the floor. The guys had left, and I was just sitting there. I'm like, what are we doing? This is just so wild. But I think we got past it. I'm like, okay, if we can get through that, everything else is easy. And so,
I feel that as an owner, I just like that's tough, man. It's tough to make those decisions.
And I think you realize, as a founder, as a CEO, you make a lot of decisions that you have control over. And then pretty quickly you realize like how much is out of your control. Like we thought we're making a good decision moving to SVB. On paper, that's the right decision.
Yep.
And then 48 hours later, we have no bank. And so, just sitting, taking a step back and being like, okay, there is only so much we can control. Let's make sure we make those decisions the right way. And then external factors, we just have to navigate as they come up. And so, even since then, like we've kind of raised money 3 times in probably the worst time to raise money since Salesforce was started.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so to be able to do that hard thing in this hard time, we're like, okay, we can get through hard things. Then the product becomes easy. Then sales becomes easy. And so, I think that was the darkest time. And it was like a week straight where it's just like, this has to be the bottom because I don't know what is below this other than us not being here anymore. And it was, we made payroll. Yeah, dude. We did not miss payroll. We've never missed payroll. One of the things I'm proudest of, we've never missed a paycheck. So we keep going.
Dude, that's amazing, man. And raising money is no joke. Like I've never personally raised money. I think the closest I've gotten to it was when I guess it's kind of raising money. We had to seek out about almost 7 figures worth of revenue, of money to sponsor an event. Yeah. And I had me and one other person, we had to go out and find the sponsors to be able to have 7 figures worth of money to cover the event space, cover everything. And that's about as close as I've gotten, but it was tough. How do you feel like you've navigated, fundraising, and where are you guys at with that?
Yeah. So, first check was like an angel check, Village Global, and then 2 angels, Mike Leventhal and Doug Merritt. And I don't think we realized at the time how unbelievable that little cohort was. Yeah. They've all been with us the entire time, countless introductions. I go to Mike Leventhal all the time, probably once a week we chat. And then,
it's amazing to find somebody like that, like a mentor. And especially, I feel like it's pretty common for angel. Maybe not as common. I think more angels maybe want to give money, but at the same time, having a mentor is like so critical. At that point. Yeah,
and he's one of the best.
That's amazing.
So, got really fortunate, and then we did a pre-seed back in June. Got fortunate again. Kickstart led that round. Kat Kennedy, she's been incredible. We pretty much owe hiring Tom, our head of product, to him. She introduced us to Mike. And she's pretty much dictated this journey. So extremely grateful for Kat. And then just like the group that we put together for the pre-seed, just incredible group of investors. I know not every founder loves their investors. I don't have a single bad thing to say about anyone on that cap table.
That's unbelievable, man.
Hopefully that doesn't change, but to date, they're just incredible. We do events with some of our VCs. We've been out to Miami to go meet with their VCs. And you know what's kind of crazy to me is I didn't know this world prior to starting. When we did our first check, I'm like, I don't know what
this is crazy. Somebody just
gave
us money,
and it's you had to go figure that whole process out, and then it was like, okay, now you get some money. Now you got to make it last, and we made $250K stretch from October of 22 to June of 23. $250K, and it's like, okay, if we can do that, we can do a lot of hard things. And even today, we're pretty scrappy with the money that we have. Yeah. We spend it when we need to, but we don't spend a dollar that we don't have to. It's I'm booking flights, I'm using my own personal miles. Doing a hotel, we're sharing a room. Every dollar's been sacred to us since day one.
Yeah, you're using the VC money like a bootstrapper.
And again, the benchmarks have changed. The time between rounds has changed. You just have to be lean. Anymore. It's not growth at all costs. You have to be lean. You have to be strategic about the money that you have, because you don't know. It's not just guaranteed that you'll get a Series A just because you did a seed, maybe it once was. It's just going to get harder. Yep. And so, we've always tried to play that long game and be smart with it, and stretch the 250. We did, the pre-seed money. We still got a lot of that in the bank. So we sleep at night today. Maybe not during SVB.
Now we do. Today you're sleeping okay.
No.
Well, good for you guys.
No.
Obviously the sales landscape has drastically changed. I feel like too in the last really 2 years and since the pandemic. But I think there's been a monumental shift in the last probably 18 months, as you probably know, and you guys I feel like are a part of for sure. Where do you feel like it's going, and where do you feel like the next big shift is? And maybe you have some data or insights with your platform on that, but.
Yeah, I kind of see sale. Okay, a lot of people woke up one day and were like, I'm going to go sell tech sales.
Yes.
Because people make a lot of money selling software.
Yep.
And for like 8 years, that was true. And now,
not so much.
Not so much. It's like 50% of reps are hitting. It was 35% not long ago.
People are done being cold called
too
right now.
You can't just cold call all day. You can't just spray and pray on emails.
Yeah.
And so, the way that we see it is almost like the NFL or the Premier League. Like, you're only going to be left with the best of the best. And what's going to happen with that is the best companies are going to want the best reps, and they're going to pay the best money to get those people. And then they have to retain them. Otherwise, they will leave and they will go somewhere else. I think a lot of the influence of AI is kind of at the bottom end, like in the SDR world, the ability to send automated emails and whatnot. And I think we're almost getting fatigued with that piece of it already.
Yes, already.
And so I think there's going to be this shift back to genuine human interactions, face-to-face selling, trust. Right? Like, huge. I think we're at that point now. And as well, the shift too is you used to be able to sell to a CRO buyer if that was your buyer and they had budget and they could sign off on it. It was done. Yeah. Now you have to sell to the CFO, who you've probably never met.
Yeah.
And you have
to
have
a much tougher sell.
Much tougher sell. And you have to have trust and rapport with a CFO who you've never met. And so now I think more than ever, it's like, get on a plane. Like, go be with your customers. This week I pinged a lady. She was in procurement at a casino that I sold when I was at Qualtrics. That was a 3-year sales cycle. From day one to the close, I thought I'd sold that deal probably 3 or 4 different times. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, it has to go to this person. Oh yeah, by the way, we're on an Indian reservation, so it has to go through the tribe. Now you got to go sell the tribe, and like all these different hurdles. But it took 3 years, but we got that deal done. Yeah. And I pinged this lady this week, and I was like, hey, I miss you. Like, hope you're doing well. Mm-hmm. Always appreciated working with you. And instantly wrote back. She's like, I think of Qualtrics, I think of you, and that to me is like, that's how selling is going to work. If you're just a Zoom seller and you're sending over a doc with numbers on it, like, it's just not going to work. So I think you have to be in front of your customer. I think that's why community is going to work.
It's huge.
We have to be trusted. I think referrals is the future of sales. Like think about it. Have you ever just woken up?
Sphere of influence.
Exactly, right? Like, I don't know how you buy your cars, but I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm talking to people who have owned those cars. Yep. I'm walking in and I'm not talking to the salesperson. I'm just like, okay, I want that car and you have it, so
so it's
give me the paperwork, work. Let's sign.
Yeah.
And so I think, buyers today are so much more educated. They're coming to your door and they pretty much want to buy because they've talked to referrals, they've talked to current customers, they're self-educated. And so I think as sellers particularly, like, we have to learn to navigate that world where you're not feature selling anymore, right? You're not doing that. It's build the trust, build the rapport. And even for us, like, the community piece, it's a long game.
100%.
Right? Like, not everyone's waking up today saying, I need to buy Alysio tomorrow. Yep. But at some point they will, and I want to be top of mind. One of my favorite stories is, I don't know if you know Ryan Serhant.
Yeah.
So,
the real estate guy in New York City, right?
And, he talks about this story where he wanted this customer X. He wanted to sell and buy property for that individual.
I think I've heard this story.
You probably heard the story. And he's like, hey, how do I be top of mind? He doesn't want to buy today, but when he does, how do I be top of mind? So he bought him a bookshelf, sent the bookshelf to his office, and he would send him books every month until his bookcase fills up. And then he calls me, he's like, Ryan, fine. I'm ready to go. Stop sending me books, dude. It's like, but like, how incredible that it's like, play the long game, be top of mind, When someone wakes up and they are ready to buy, like you have to be that name, right? Like if I said to you right now, okay, you're gonna go to the gas station, you're thirsty, what drink are you gonna buy? You already knew what drink.
Oh, yeah.
Like you didn't have
100%.
to think about it. It's like, I'm gonna go get Red Bull, right? And you just, there might be 1,000 options when you get there, but you just beeline straight for the Red Bull. Like we have to be that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's such good advice, especially for, I think, founders that are just getting started, want to do something different. Like this is where it's going. And an interesting maybe turn on that is it's also where it's always been. Like B2B, they've never like come out and said it, but that's how people have always bought.
Yeah.
It's just like we've done the things because performance marketing has been the key that you could turn, or the dial you can turn, and stuff happens, or you just make more calls.
We got lazy. We got lazy.
We got super lazy
because for a long time everyone was buying.
Yes.
Right. It's like the wallets were open, people wanted tech, and people got lazy and just kind of lost the fundamentals. And so I think there's definitely going to be a shift back to that. Like the best salesperson I've ever seen in my career. Shout out Jordan Plater. So he was the top sales rep at Qualtrics, and he's just like, if you want to learn from someone, like go learn from that guy for enterprise selling. Like he moved to New York to be in the backyard of his customers, and it wasn't like he just moved to Manhattan. He moved to the block where Goldman Sachs, American Express, all of them, he could look into their windows. Like that's how close he was to those customers. And I've talked to people that worked at Amex that know Jordan, who are like, he knew our org better than we did, right? So and like, you just have to be at that level
you do.
now. 100%. And I think we've been very lazy as salespeople for a while, and it's only going to get harder. Yeah. And we only have to get better, and we have to continue to level up as salespeople.
Yeah, no, 100%. Lastly, I think for those that have been inspired by your journey, your story that you shared, and are obviously looking to make their mark in the industry, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I'd try and give, the same piece of advice is I think you have to be so authentic, like to who you are as a person. Whether you want to be a fashion designer or you want to start a tech company, it doesn't matter. Like whoever you are inside, like just trust that. Learn from my mistakes. Like I probably shouldn't have ever gone to Goldman, but I met Ryan, so I'm grateful for it. But I knew inside me that was not really who I was, and I was never going to be the best at it. So like take a step back. Everyone else has already been done. Like you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. You have to lean on like your experiences, and then as well, like I always just think about, just pull the parachute. Like just jump and pull the parachute. You'll land safely, whether it works out or not. Like, what is the worst that can happen? No one's like signing up for an MBA, paying $150K to do an MBA and being like, this might fail. It's no, something's going to come out of it. And it's the same, like with starting something, it's like, what's the worst? I've already learned more in the last year and a half than I did in 10 years previous. And
maybe you are already in your worst case scenario and you just don't realize that.
Exactly. So it's like, just take that jump if you think it's right. But as well, like I always try and give this word of caution where it's like, I don't think people understand how hard it is. Like we glorify entrepreneurship so much.
Yes.
And it's like, do you understand? Like you have to sacrifice your time, your money, your family, your friends, your social life, all of that to maybe have a shot at it maybe working out. And I don't think people realize that. It's like, if you want to do something, like wake up and go and try and be a seller on Amazon. Yeah. Try it for 6 months. Like you'll learn business, you'll learn money, you'll learn payroll, like all those things, and then like maybe then go swing for the fences. But it is so much harder than like anyone ever tells you at school, or even people that have done it. Like unless you're actually talking to a founder, like they will always shoot you straight, right? But then you just hear these stories of the big successes and the wins, but it's like it is so hard. So take a long, hard look in the mirror
and talk to a lot
of people.
Yeah, talk to a lot of people.
Get the good, bad, the ugly. Because for every good person you talk to that at work, there's 9 others that didn't work. So
We'll love it. Well, Aaron, thanks so much for the chat today. It was good to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your story, entrepreneurship. I'm stoked about Alysio. I think you guys are going places, obviously, and you've seen a lot of success, and I'm stoked about it.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
How do people find you?
Yeah, website, alysio.ai, LinkedIn, Aaron McReynolds. And if you want my cell phone, 801-717-5134.
I love it, man.
Feel free to text. I'll answer any questions.
I love it. Well, thank you again. Appreciate it. That's a wrap.
No, thank you.